everybody. Welcome to Edith Morley Park in Campbell. My name is Betty. We don't have anyone yet.
Yeah.
Let's wait to see if I'll have anyone. We have one person watching. Welcome, Ed. We're just going to be waiting a little bit to get people up and going. Can you let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay? Good morning, Ed. We have 3 people on with us right now. If you can please let us know in the chat if you're hearing us okay, just give us a thumbs up. Welcome, good morning. Good morning, everyone. We are at Edith Morley Park in Campbell. Please let us know you can hear us okay. Just giving us a little thumbs up. Good morning, everyone. My name is Betty. I am an educational aide at Open Space Authority. Thank you, Ron, for letting us know you can hear us okay. We are at Edith Morley Park in Campbell this morning with Phoenix from Phoenix Curiosity Cabinet. We are going to be talking a little bit about local plants and our changing landscape here at Edith Morley Park. She's going to walk us around and show us a couple of things. So go ahead, take it away, Phoenix.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join us this morning. We are at beautiful Edith Morley Park here, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the plants, native plants for California and how they're adapted, but also some of the non-native plants and how California's landscape has changed over time. This is a good park to talk about that because we have some very landscaped areas, like a big field. We have some little habitats that have been put in the middle for wildlife. So we've got a variety of areas that we can look at within a very small area. And we'll also be talking a bit about the role water plays in both what plants are adapted to where and how the water use is going to change California's landscape as well a bit.
And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, Phoenix, would you like us to wait towards the end, or is it okay if they put it in the chat?
Oh, they can certainly put it in the chat if you can just let me know when someone has a question and read it off to me. I will do my best to answer it. All
right, so if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. I apologize, we are wearing our masks, so it might sound a little muffled. We do have our microphones on. I hope that you can hear us okay. And there is some landscaping going on in the background in the park right now.
Yes, the changing landscape in action.
All right, we're going to get moving. I'm going to be following Phoenix. If you want to let us know where you're joining us from, you can go ahead and put that in the chat as well. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from.
So I'm going to follow the path around this way a little bit and talk about this area over here first.
Perfect. Yes, Ron, it's a little bit cool this morning, but we are bundled up. And with our walks, we're starting to get warm. This is not Santa Teresa. This is Edith Morley Park in Campbell.
Okay, so one of the areas they have in the park is kind of, you can't see what's going on right now, but they have this area over here where they got different plants, and you try and use this as a meadow habitat for some of the animals. So different times of the year you'll see different plants on here that they try and leave as habitat for animals. We have one of our native plants right here, Yarrow. So you see the white flowers on it here. And these kind of fern-like leaves. So there's usually quite a bit of this plant growing here. It's fairly adapted to some dry areas, and this is a plant that's been used medicinally by many people for a long time. So we're going to kind of follow the path along here because there's several plants I'd like to point out in this area where they've planted some more shrub-like areas. Lots of squirrels around this park. Okay, so this plant is ceanothus. Sometimes it's called California lilac. And there are a few areas this one's starting to bloom a bit. And the flowers on this can actually be, if you put water in your hands and rub them together, they'll lather up and make kind of a soapy suds. And these have been used as a soap in the past. Now, a lot of California is very seasonal with the water it gets. We're getting to the wetter season now, but a lot of California is very dry and hot. So that means a lot of the plants have adaptations to deal with that dry and that heat. So one of those adaptations are to have very waxy leaves, thick leaves.
Phoenix, can we stop really quick? Maybe we can put your mic in the mask.
Yeah.
Folks are just having a little trouble hearing you, and I know I'm a very, very loud person, so they might not have trouble with mine just because I'm pretty loud. But
Okay.
all right, can you try that?
Can people hear me better now?
How are folks? Does that sound better for you? Can you keep talking a little bit?
Yeah. The ceanothus has kind of waxy leaves. Many plants will have a coating on them that helps prevent water loss. If you look at plant leaves under the microscope, there are specialized cells called stomata. They kind of look almost like two kind of leaves like this is an oval. And those can swell open and shut to kind of help control the amount of moisture loss through leaves. Having a waxy coating on the leaves will also help slow down water loss from evaporation from the leaves. Also, having smaller leaves means less water loss. So many of the plants in California that grow in very hot, dry areas are going to tend to have smaller leaves to cut down on water loss.
I'd like to try to feel that. Oh yeah, they are very waxy.
Up here we have another California native plant, California Phage. And you can see, this tends to grow in very hot, dry areas. You'll find it a lot in the hillsides and the chaparral. And you can see this has even smaller leaves. And if you see this plant and you rub it, it has a very strong smell to it. Many of the plants have oils in them that will help deter animals from eating them. This is also to make them pretty flammable. A lot of parts of California's landscape actually do depend on periodic fire. There are some plants that the seeds won't germinate unless they've been through fire. Some of the problems we're facing with fires now in this changed landscape we're living in is we have a long history of the past 100 years. Well, that's not really long in the big scheme of things, but for the past 100 years or so, we've suppressed fires that would naturally go through an area, and that means the vegetation has built up a lot more. You have a lot more fuel, so fires can burn hotter and faster and farther than they would have historically.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that sound. The landscapers are also at the park, so that's why it sounds, you have that ambient noise in the background. I do apologize about that.
Okay, so many of the native people of California did use fire as a way to help manage and work with the landscape. But a lot of that stuff we've kind of ignored for a long time now, unfortunately. So one more thing about the California sage. This is one of those areas where common names and scientific names become important for what you're talking about. Sometimes people think sage, oh, like sage I use in my cooking. These are not even related to each other. Culinary sage that we use for cooking is actually in the mint family. This is in the Artemisia family. So they are totally unrelated. So this is one of the reasons that scientists will use scientific names, because all around the world, a given organism will have one name that's consistent if you're using the scientific name. So any scientist anywhere in the world is going to know what organism you're talking about. Is where common names can vary from area to area, and sometimes you have the same common name being used for multiple different species that may not even be related. Okay, so let's come on this way a little bit. So the landscape we're in here at this park is pretty much artificially created. Even though they have the native plants, those are ones people put there. They're not really grown wild. California's landscape overall has changed drastically in the past several hundred years. As settlers came in from other areas started to become farms.
Whenever we have a question, folks want to know, a question from Christine Powell, is the California sage edible?
No. So, no, it is not edible. So that's one of the reasons as well I brought up the fact that it's different than the sage we cook with.
They're also asking about the percolation ponds, if there's water in there.
So there's not water in the percolation ponds right now. These ones have been dry for quite a while. So since we were asked about the percolation ponds, this is a good chance to talk about those. Water is one of the big determining factors in California for what's growing where. Since some areas are very dry, we have very seasonal rain, and as more people have moved into this area and the human population has grown, the water demands have gone way up. This is problematic, especially in years we have drought. But one of the things that can happen is as we're pulling water from the ground to use, if that water does not go back, we can get subsidence. So water underground has got little areas filled with the water. And if the water's not there, they start compressing and sinking. The town of El Viso has actually sunk 11 feet over the past 100 years or so because of subsidence from water being pulled out. So we try to put water back, it makes the water go back into that water table, which is part of the job of percolation ponds, where they can, water can gather when it rains. Many times the water district can divert it from one area to another to help fill these ponds, and then that water can percolate or soak back down to the ground and help recharge the groundwater, so that we can try and keep that water table where it should be. There's a lot of percolation ponds here throughout the South Bay area. Some of them have water more times than other ones do. But when they do have water, that's going to attract certain wildlife as well to hang out. Bird life will come in and use the area. Okay, so here.
You're not hearing the water now. What you're hearing is also the cars and just the background noise. you might hear the little pond that is here in this space as well.
Yeah, so the traffic, we're fairly close to Highway 17 here. So the entrance is just kind of off that way. I get turned around in this park sometimes. So we are hearing traffic, especially from Highway 17. Now, if you look around this area, it's far more plants and trees going on than some of the other areas of the park. This area has been landscaped as almost a little mini riparian zone. Zone along a creek or river where you have plants growing on, different plant life such as availability of water. Come over here. We can see that there's an artificial pond here that has a small artificial creek that runs down to a lower artificial pond, and they cycle it around with pumps.
Yes, folks are asking about the sound of water.
Yeah, okay, so can they hear it from here now? Awesome. So even though this is an artificially created creek area, it is still providing habitat for a lot of animals. This is actually a spot I found that's very good for bird watching in the morning because since there's more trees, there's the water. Animals are going to be attracted to come in because they need the water. There's more places to hide with the trees. There's food. I've seen many, many species of birds here, including a black-crowned night heron that comes down to this pond to fish sometimes in the evening. And we also have a small Sutton hawk that you'll sometimes see here in the morning trying to hunt for squirrels. We'll move over to the...
It seems like they might be getting a lot of static. I don't know if you can,
move this around a little? Or?
maybe.
That helps some?
I'm trying to find down and see if that helps folks. Did that help folks with the static? Her putting her mic inside her mouth? Can you try saying something, Phoenix?
Yes. We're here at the water now, so we can talk a little bit about the plants here near the water. Is the sound quality better now?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is a good example of, even in urban areas, having little pockets of natural habitat can go a long way to helping the local wildlife because that gives them places to stop, to exist, to nest, to feed. So one of the things personally I keep hoping to see happen is more urban areas having small pockets in them. In some of the larger open spaces, trying to have wildlife corridors so that animals can get between the open spaces because all animals need a certain amount of space. And if you have little isolated pockets, that makes it a little bit harder for them.
Perfect. It sounds like it might still be the same. I'm going to kind of... So we're getting different people say different things. Folks are saying it sounds okay, others not.
Try this, that's rubbing right in my face, so that's probably a great extra background noise. Okay. Hopefully that will help them. So, we've got different plants here than other areas because of the availability of water. So, let's see. Back that way we have some sycamore trees, the ones with the kind of patchy bark we passed back there. They're going to tend to grow more towards water. In fact, that was one way people sometimes have figured out where there might be water nearby based on the plants that were nearby. If you found plants that needed a lot of water, it was telling you that there was going to be a water source nearby. Does anyone have any questions or?
Do any folks have any questions? So she was just sharing about how certain plants are found depending on if water is nearby. And so in the past, if folks were looking for water, then they knew if that plant was around that there might be water close by, which is really, really cool.
So, and also, plants in water can have bigger leaves than those ones we were seeing that grow in the drier areas, because they can afford to lose a lot more water through their leaves. Move around this way.
We have a question if you are a master gardener.
I am not a master gardener. I do have a garden that I do for fun, but I am not a master gardener. I just really like plants. Now, we have several species of oak in this park. A few months ago, I did a program for open space that was all about oaks, where I talked about them in much more depth. I think that's recorded up on your site. Yeah, so if you want more information about oaks, that's a good place to reference back to, but we won't touch on them some. So we've got the live oaks here, and they tend to grow in dry areas, so they're going to have those small leathery leaves again to prevent water loss. And the live oaks actually are going to stay green all year. Some of the other oaks we'll be looking at lose their leaves, seasonally. But the live oaks just kind of lose a few leaves at a time and regrow them, so they're going to be green all year round. But all live oaks, the valley oaks, black oaks we're going to look at today, they all produce acorns, and that's going to be an important food source for the wildlife. Historically, that was an important food source for many native peoples in the area. And so oak woodlands in and of themselves are a plant community of California. These ones are dead, but you can see the size and kind of shape of the live oak. So they have a very different leaf shape than most people think of with oaks. Now, this whole area is obviously planted. It's a big lawn because this is a city park where many people come to. They have games out here or gatherings, and so it's been landscaped for those purposes. Now, if you want, looking on this, you'll notice that this area is watered. There's irrigation here. So there's different little spouts that will come up to water it, because otherwise this grass would all die off in the summer, kind of like the grasses out there or the percolation pond. And so if you have looked at the California hills at any time of year, you'll notice they tend to be very green in the winter and go brown in the summer, because they take advantage of the water when it's there and then die off. So if you've got green lawns like this other time of year, they're being watered. Now, a lot of California's vegetation has changed a lot over time. There's been a lot of introduced plants from other areas. Some have been brought in on purpose for landscaping or agriculture. Some were brought in accidentally. If you had mud and seeds on the hooves of animals, or seeds that people were bringing in. So all this grass like we have on our lawns is not a native species here. But it did get out all over the hills, and it drastically changed that landscape because it can grow very fast. So when we get the water in the winter, it can grow faster and push out native plants. But then it's not adapted really to live in the heat and the dry, so then it dies off. But whenever new plants or animals are brought into an area, it changes the relationship between everything that's there already. An invasive species or a plant might push out things that were there before, or like an animal that might be kept in check, or a plant because of predation in one area. If they come to another new area where there's no predators, they can easily expand very quickly and shift the balance of things. So there's a lot of people looking at, okay, how can we protect some of the native plants here in those communities when everything has shifted so much in the last couple of hundred years. The land use has changed radically. The way the native peoples live here, use the land, was extremely different than the settlers that came in. Many of the Ohlone in this area historically were hunter-gatherers and made use of the plants and animals that were here, as opposed to settlers that came in and started planting crops, agriculture, and shifting things around a lot. This area that we're in, the Santa Clara Valley, has gone through, even just the last, say, 50 years, a huge shift. If you talk to older residents of the area, they'll talk about the orchards that covered the area. At one point, the Santa Clara Valley was called the Valley of Heart's Delight because of all the orchards that were all over it. As tech companies moved in and things became more urbanized, a lot of those orchards went away, and now we've changed a lot of areas to the Silicon Valley and a much more urban environment, which brings different demands and changes. Each of those types of land use is going to change that landscape, what plants are going to be there, how water is being used, how wildlife can move through the area. Hey, can I get a time check?
Yeah.
Here we are, just so I can make sure I'm dividing the time for the stuff I want to hit. Up.
We are at 10:27 right now.
Okay, awesome. Are there any questions?
We had a question that, let me turn on my mic. We did have a question about what native peoples were here, but Ron and Rachel have answered that in the chat. Thank you very much. Great.
Seasonally, you see different plants pretty much every area too. Here in the spring, a lot of these percolation ponds have a lot of California poppies in them. So here we've got our next oak species. We've got a valley oak. So we've got an incomplete broken leaf here, but oh, here's a better leaf. Oh, this one's got other interesting things to talk about too. So this one will be losing its leaves here at some point. But if you look at the back of this leaf, you see these things that look almost like miniature pink Hershey's Kisses. These are galls. So the galls are caused by a number of things. They're usually specific to particular plants. Some of them are caused by fungus or things like that. But many of them, like these, are caused by insects. So and if you've ever seen any of those big wooden balls growing in oak trees, the oak galls, those are caused by insects too, but there's a number of insects that will lay their egg on a plant and just have a growth hormone around them and cause the plant to grow a growth surrounding the egg. And this provides protection for the egg and food for the larvae when they hatch. And then when the organism is ready to metamorphose into an adult, they'll burrow their way out. So there's a number of different kinds of galls. They are generally specific to a particular kind of plant, and many of them are caused by insects, but not all of them are caused by insects. We have some more ceanothus here, but this is in kind of a different stage than the one we looked at before. We saw the purple flowers. These are the seeds. So these dark black things here. A lot of the seeds have fallen off, and you have the empty place here. But this one still has a few seeds left on it.
You know what this plant is with the pretty yellow flowers?
That one I'm not sure of. I need to look that one up. So here's another one of those black oak. This one, the leaves that come to much more of a point than the other valley oak we were looking at. So they've planted a number of different oak species in this park when they decided to landscape it. And we've got another California native plant right here with these big clusters of red berries. This is Toyon. Sometimes it's also called California holly. In fact, Hollywood was named for this plant because the hillsides there had so much of this growing on there at one point. If you drive along some parts of 101 on the hills, you'll see a lot of this plant with the red berries. But it will ripen usually November, December. And this provides a lot of food for wildlife. In fact, if you look at this plant, you can see that a lot of the local wildlife has already made off with a lot of the berries. And plan was a plant that the Ohlone and native peoples in the area, it was used as a food source. I believe it had to be roasted or prepared a certain way, and I don't know what that process was, but this was a food source for people as well as the wildlife.
If any folks have any questions while we're walking to our next plant, we'd be happy to answer some.
So this is another native plant, manzanita. It does produce an edible berry. I know it's used to be made into like a lemonade type of drink. And the bark on this, like it's relative to the drone trees, it's kind of red and peely. So seasonally that kind of, some of those layers will peel off. I always encourage people to get out and explore nature for themselves. But one thing I like to also encourage people to do is pick a place and go there regularly. This allows you to see the seasonal changes and understand an area, how it changes throughout the year. And if you're lucky and you can go to an area regularly over several years, you'll notice even more changes. I've been coming to this park for morning walks and stuff for about 10 years. These plants, when I started coming here, were about my height. So
They've grown quite a bit.
yes, so by coming here regularly, it's allowed me to see changes, in the plant life and what's here, not only seasonally, but over the years as well. So when I first started hiking here, there was more regularly watering the percolation ponds, for example.
We have a question. Let me turn on my mic so everyone can hear it. So we have a question. Are there any large plans for the park with plantings or landscaping? Oh, let me go back. Are there any larger plans for the park? For planting? Hold on, let me see. With plantings or landscaping that you know of?
Okay, so could you repeat the question?
So are there any larger plans on adding, I guess, any additional plants or landscaping to this park?
I do not know that. So the place probably this park's actually it's a City of Campbell park. So if you check the City of Campbell and their site, they could probably tell you a bit more. I know the Water District has some jurisdiction here too because they're in charge of the percolation ponds. And this is also a park that Open Space helps to fund as well. But I do not know what the future landscaping plans are.
Thank you.
Okay, now, you notice we're very close to the road here. Roads are one of those things that are going to affect things in many ways. Not only for okay, can wildlife be safely crossing without getting squished? But also cars leave a lot of residue on the road. Oil dripping out, copper from the brakes, just general stuff. Now when it rains, all that stuff washes off the road and into the waterway. This is going to affect, the levels of different pollution and stuff for the animal life, for the plant life, and ultimately for our human use too, because before that water can be used, it has to be cleaned up. So this is one way that the area getting very urbanized has affected things in ways people don't usually think of. Also, roadways means the water cannot soak in through the asphalt. This changes the path for what floods where and when. So trying to figure out how to deal with water so that it can be where we need it to be and where wildlife needs it to be and where we don't want it to be is an ongoing thing that places like the Water District try and figure out. And all that water, anything that you put out there is going to probably wind up in the waterways. Fertilizers, pesticides, those leach out into the waterways and affect other parts of the ecosystem. And I like to point out to the kids, like, if you're walking along and you just drop some litter on the ground, it's still probably going to wind up in the water, even if you haven't directly put it there. Because, so I can show you right over here. Storm drains. Matter of fact, many of them, you'll see these little signs that say, no dumping, drains to the bay. So even if you're nowhere near the bay or the ocean or a waterway, the trash that gets put out there still finds their way out there because it will get rinsed down into storm drains like this and eventually make its way out to the bay or the ocean or other waterways.
We are about 10:40.
Okay, so Linda, 10 so far or 11 or?
11.
Yeah,
If you have more stuff to show us, that'd be great.
Yeah, I definitely got more stuff that I can share.
Yeah.
So we're going to backtrack to back where we were. Looking for other interesting things along the way. Now, one of the fun things about being out on hikes is when I lead a program, there may be certain things like I know that a given plant is in an area and I plan to stop and talk about it. But lots of times you find things you're not expecting that provide a chance to talk about things that you wouldn't normally have brought up.
And welcome to those folks that are just joining us. We are at Edith Morley Park in Campbell. And Phoenix from Phoenix's Curiosity Cabinet is showing us around the park and different plants and what are some of their uses and how this landscape has changed over time. Thank you for joining us.
So since we were talking about leaf shape, here's a good example of a larger leaf that would lose a lot more water than the smaller leaf. So ones with larger leaves like this are going to tend to grow near areas where there's more reliable water.
Phoenix, we have an excellent question. Folks are wondering where you got your poncho. Everyone is definitely loving it.
Oh, okay. I actually got this probably around 20 years ago at a Renaissance fair. So there's a weaver that is last times at the Dickens Fair and Renaissance Fair that sells these.
Thank you.
I'm walking along the ground as we go because as I explore nature, you always want to look at different levels. What's happening on the ground, what's happening farther up, so you don't miss details of what's happening.
Zoom in on our little squirrel friend.
So lots of squirrels at this time. So a lot of animals like this are actually important in the life cycle of the plants as well. Because many of the squirrels, as well as animals like scrub jays, will gather up acorns from oaks, bury them for future food sources, forget about where they put them, and use dried the oak seeds to grow in the area. The live plants, but plants are actually important in all the parts of their life cycle. So we're just sitting here by a pile of leaves right now. But leaf litter, especially like if you're in a forest, is actually really important. It's not only is it going to break down and return those nutrients to the soil, this is habitat for a lot of creatures. There are a number of creatures that will hide in this, different insect life. Some of them will have their legs, their eggs or larvae, in these piles. So sometimes leaving some of the leaves and things like that on can be an important part of having habitat for local wildlife.
I'm going to share here that it's a Open Space Authority funded park. If folks have any questions while we are walking to our next location, please feel free to type those in the chat and we'll try to get to those.
tie into the leaf litter, dead trees are also going to be a dead plant habitat. Not only are there things that will live in the dead trees, like some woodpeckers will make their homes in trees. There's a number of insect larvae that will help break it down. So even dead plants are an important part of that whole cycle. I was mentioning the sycamores earlier, so since we were passing by one, I wanted to point it out here with its kind of squashy bark.
It looks like that's a heart shape right there.
Yeah, I think someone carved in this tree at one point.
Folks are asking if there's any wildlife in the ponds, like goldfish or anything like that.
There are goldfish in there that are heavily stocked in there. There's a number of insect larvae. At the right time of year, you see a huge amount of dragonflies in this park. Part of dragonflies' life cycle is aquatic. They will lay their eggs in the water. The nymph of the dragonfly lives underwater and will eat things swimming around for the first part of its life cycle. When it's ready to go to metamorphosis, it crawls out of the water and transforms into its final dragonfly shape. And even though the adult dragonflies are not living in the water, they're still hunting over the water for other insect life that might be flying around. And they still need it to come lay their eggs in. I have heard and seen bullfrogs in this pond, different times of the year. There is a black-crowned night heron that shows up every so often in the evening to go fishing. So there's quite a bit of wildlife with that water there.
And the goldfish were purposely put in there?
Yes. And if I had a guess, although I'm not 100% sure on this, they were probably put in there to help control the mosquito population. Because parts of these ponds are quite still, and mosquitoes like to lay their eggs in standing water. Many times artificial ponds will add fish to eat the mosquito larvae, because mosquitoes also have part of their life cycle in the water. So mosquitoes lay their eggs in the water, the larvae live in the water, and they emerge when they're going through metamorphosis. So to keep the mosquito populations down in artificial ponds, many times fishes are added to eat that larva.
Great, thank you.
So this is not a native plant, but this is butterfly bush. And this was added here most likely, I would guess, because as the name would imply, it attracts a lot of butterflies. Having nectar sources for animals like hummingbirds, butterflies, and other bees is an important role that plants play in the ecosystem. Some of the native insects and stuff will depend on particular native plants as sources, so that's another reason to try and keep everything in balance. But one thing that some people don't realize is that with these butterfly species, usually need two types of host plants to attract them. The plant, the larva, the caterpillars eat, many times is different than the plant that produces the nectar that the adult butterflies eat. So if you are trying to create wildlife habitat in your yard to attract butterflies, animals like that, research what those plants are for a given species. Because if you want to encourage them to come to your yard, you'll need both the food for the larva and for the adult.
We have about 10 minutes.
Passing by the Phage that we started at here. Just to kind of orient people to where we are in our zoonosis. Now, having brush and cover like this is an important role plants play for habitat as well, because animals need hiding spaces and nesting spaces. So, for example, in areas where there's soil, they will depend on having brush to hide in nursery. So having a lot about creating wildlife habitat is making sure that there are a variety of needs for food, shelter, nesting places, and the different ways that different animals and organisms interact with the environment. And I'm sure the squirrels probably are quite grateful for some cover like this as well as the trees, because there is a section off of the park that I have seen trying to hunt the squirrels out here on many different mornings. Also out here is the Campbell Community Garden. In front of the garden where there's the fruit trees to talk about.
Thank you to those folks that are joining us. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat.
Hey, so I mentioned the agricultural history of Santa Clara Valley and some more trees. The parks have put a number of fruit trees, examples out here in front of the community garden, that are many of the types of plants that were in some of the orchards. This area grew lots of prunes. Here in Campbell, that's why we have the prune yard. And here are names for the prunes, the apricots, cherries. These are all fruits that were commonly grown in orchards, apricots. And there's a whole history of harvesting them for canning, for drying, and that being a major industry here. So we have that apple tree with actually it still has an apple on it, amazingly. Squirrels usually clear these out pretty quick. Got cherry. So the blooms are pretty nice on this at the right time of year. Pear. Almond. And if you're walking along something like the Lost Yarrow Creek Trail, one of the earlier plants you usually see blooming trees you see blooming in the spring are actually almond trees. You'll see the whitest pink blossoms. So there's a number of these that are just kind of spraying up in areas that weren't necessarily where an orchard was. But just like with the oak trees, animals will carry the seeds off to other areas so they can take root. I wanted to point out on this tree as well, the lichen. So we've got several actually species of lichen here on this tree. But lichen is actually an organism that is a combination of an algae and a fungus that exist symbiotically together. So the fungus provides some of the structure, the algae provides some of the food through photosynthesis. Having a good amount of lichen around is actually can be an indicator of good air quality if you're looking at an area over time and the trends towards what lichen colonies are doing. An apricot tree, which they took out, because you can see, looking at the stump that's left behind, this is a good example here of other animals making use of the plants where there's been some various insect damage and things here to it. but this will continue to decompose this tree stump. Kind of like they've got some more of those same trees down that way.
Yeah, we're at 10:55, so we want to leave a little bit of time for folks to answer, ask any questions. So we are at 10:55 now. If anybody has any questions for Phoenix, we are here and available to answer questions. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us here at
Edith Morley Park in Campbell.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This is one of Open Space Authority's urban funded parks. So if you are in the Campbell area and now that you've seen this tour, please come check it out for yourself. It is a wonderful, wonderful park. I wish I lived closer. Come visit here. Thank you so much, Phoenix. And if folks have any questions, please go ahead and type those in. If not, go ahead and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. It's a cozy Saturday.
And for anyone who's interested, for Phoenix's Curiosity Cabinet, I teach a number of different science and maker and STEM-oriented classes for all ages, both kids and adults. Currently, my programs are online, although normally I do have programs in person as well. But if you'd like more information about my programs, if you go to phoenixescabinet.com, you can find out more about what I do there.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Phoenix. And it doesn't seem like we have any questions. So thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And yes, thank you so much for everyone that was answering questions in the chat. Ron, Rachel, there were quite a few of you that were answering, and I really appreciate that. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you, folks.
Have a great day.